I breathe in peace. Come on. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe with me. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. If you would have seen me on Wednesday morning, I had my earphones on. I was sort of pacing around the house, listening to the president's speech to the rally in the morning before the vote in Congress. And my wife was working on her computer at the kitchen table, and she couldn't hear because I said, "You wouldn't believe what he's saying." Yeah, I can't believe a president of the United States is saying these things. This is crazy. We are living in a crazy time. And I can imagine if you were listening, what you were thinking. After a week like we've been through, the shocking and tragic events, watching white supremacists and others walking up and down the Capitol, stealing and desecrating and harming people, and with zip ties ready to handcuff and take hostages, yelling out that they want to hang the vice president of the United States of America. You know, I heard a lot of people talking this week about the Capitol building like it's a house of worship. People said it's sacred. It's a sacred place. They're desecrating sacred ground. And you could just feel it in the hearts of so many of us. And I'll say for the founders of our nation, as well as the founders of our church, our tradition of Unitarian Universalism, democracy is sacred. Democracy is sacred in the sense that one person, one vote is an affirmation in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is a profound and tangible expression of our equality and freedom. Voting is a sacrament in this secular religion, if you will, of democracy. It is an act that affirms our fundamental values as a people. From the beginning of this country, the nation, the motto of this nation has been the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, which translates as out of many, one. This motto can be seen on the Great Seal of the Continental Congress from the 1700s, and it's appeared on coins since 1795. We see it today on our $1 bill. Forrest Church, my late colleague, explained it this way in his book, American Creed. E pluribus unum cut directly against the grain of all previous human experience. What was familiar to history was the idea of one over many. Also the idea of over many, a few. The idea that out of many could come a unity that could govern itself had no historical precedent. One of the reasons that the seditious acts of this past week were so upsetting and dangerous is that an attempt to disenfranchise any voter, let alone millions of voters, is not just undemocratic and unconstitutional. It is a breach of the fundamental glue that binds our nation together across all of our differences. It is to raise the opinions of a few politicians in Washington over the many. Or even worse, it's to raise the opinions of one person, one politician and authority over the rest of us. Our democracy and the idea of one person, one vote is a sacrament to the worth and dignity of every human being. Now, don't get me wrong, our democracy might be sacred, but it is certainly not perfect. And our history, like all histories, is filled with atrocities and injustice. As we know, it took wars as well as peaceful protests to arrive at the fruition of this idea of e pluribus unum. Women fighting for the right to vote. It took great sacrifices and courage in order to move us from one landowning white man, one vote, to one person, one vote. All the way through the civil rights movement, and it continues today, the fight for voting equality. But the fact that so many people had to fight and that we still struggle and sacrifice for this ideal makes it all the more sacred. What is so apparent after the events of this week and the events of the past few months since the election is that a house divided by opinions can indeed stand as our country has for over 240 years. But a house divided by lies and distrust cannot stand. Let me say it a different way. A nation filled with a multiplicity of opinions is an expression of our liberty. A nation filled with a multiplicity of competing truths is a recipe for tyranny. Now, before all of this happened on Wednesday, I'd planned to speak about finding control in a world that is out of control, a topic that applies just as much today as it did before Wednesday. Because when people feel out of control, they look for ways to find control and feel some power. One of the things that people do is they tend to believe in something or someone that causes them to feel safe and in control. Now, we see this right now in people who do not believe that the coronavirus is really so bad. They say it's not even as bad as the flu. I don't know why everybody's making such a big deal about it despite the evidence. They say we don't need to shut down. We don't need to wear masks. They say because they think they know better than the scientists and the doctors. It feels very powerful to believe that you have the real truth, that you know more than the people who are experts in the field. People feel very smart and cunning, that they have the real information, and that they're not being fooled by a grand international conspiracy of lies that's really about some people making money or some people controlling us or some people destroying our economy. It's in a time when everybody feels powerless against a raging novel virus. These folks feel brilliant and smarter than the rest, more well-informed than most of us. It's a way of feeling powerful. It's a way of feeling in control in an out-of-control situation. And people follow conspiracy theories for the same reason. And people follow autocratic leaders for the same reason. And people believe in various ideas about being part of a super race for the same reason. It helps them feel in control and powerful in an out-of-control world in a time when they feel powerless. But let's face it, if you believe that the country is being run by satanic pedophiles, and one man alone is going to save it, as the QAnon conspiracy claims, then you'll commit sedition if you think that's what the leader is calling for. If you think you're part of a super race that's being diluted and taken over by lesser human beings, you will loot and destroy an entire community like Greenwood here in Tulsa in 1921. Or build concentration camps like Germany did to kill the Jews during World War II. Or like China is doing among the Uyghur Muslim minorities right now. Or try to disrupt our democracy as it grows more and more inclusive. As we send the first black senator from a Confederate state into power, into the Senate, as a young Jewish millennial takes power in the Senate, as a black and Asian female woman heads to the White House as our vice president. And we see it around the world. More and more countries are turning to strongman leaders, authoritarian leaders, because they want some control in what feels like an out-of-control world. Now, on a more mundane level, superstition is one of the ways that a lot of us can feel or try to feel in control in our lives. You know, as a boy, I can remember that I never stepped on a crack while walking to school in the morning when I was a young boy because, I had learned, step on a crack, break your mother's back. Now, I was young, and at least it was something I could do to help out. I was pretty powerful. Now, you might wear your lucky pair of socks to help your favorite football team win the game. You're so powerful. The entire team, all the fans everywhere are just counting on you to wear those socks to change the outcome. We knock on wood, we say jinx, whatever the things that we do sometimes that help us to feel in control. But these are all ways of dealing with the world we live in, often the feelings of powerlessness. So let's talk about a constructive way to feel in control in a world that's out of control, like the times that we're living in. The late Stephen Covey talked in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, about this idea of spheres of concerns and spheres of influence. The way that he talked about it, we all have this giant sphere of concern in which we have all kinds of things that we're concerned about, whether it's prejudice, climate change, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, hunger, education, poverty, healthcare, you name it. Then we have a smaller sphere in the middle called our sphere of influence. These are the things we can actually impact. These are the things that we can actually do something about. I mean, when you think about the example of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that may be in your circle of concern, but it's not likely something that's in your sphere of influence. It would really have no impact on that. And what Covey explains is that people who focus their energy on their sphere of concern that's outside of their sphere of influence end up feeling powerless and burned out and ineffective and eventually cynical. Because they're putting their energy, they're putting their mental space, their emotions and everything into a lot of things that they have absolutely no ability to affect or impact. But people and communities that focus on their sphere of influence, they're effective, they feel empowered, they're energized, and they end up growing their influence and their impact I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. One of my favorites goes back to when I was a teenager in the 80s, when you may remember a rock star named Bob Geldof. Or maybe you probably don't, because he was, at least at the time, he was part of a band that was not very well known. They were called the Boomtown Rats, and one day he decided that he was going to, he saw pictures on the news, many of us can remember them who were around then, of children and people dying in a famine in Africa, which was affecting hundreds of thousands of people throughout Africa at the time. And he saw that and he said, I need to do something about this. But what was he going to do? He was this British rock star with a band that had, kind of a one-hit wonder. But he thought, I've got a band. I've got a friend who owns a pub. I think I'm gonna have a benefit concert. I'm gonna ask my friend if I could use his pub to have a benefit concert, raise money, and we're gonna send it to Africa to feed some children. At least it's something I can do. So he made up flyers and he put them all around London, in the area of London where the pub was. The Boomtown Rats are gonna be having a benefit concert to raise money to help feed children in Africa. Well, a couple days later, after he started advertising, he got a phone call from a guy who said, hey, I hear you're raising money for children in Africa. Do you mind if my band joins your band for the concert? And he said, wow, that'd be great, because the person he was talking to was Mick Jagger. He was going to bring the Rolling Stones. And then when people heard that the Rolling Stones were part of this concert, then Elton John wanted to be a part of it. Then over on this side of the world, Tom Petty and Eric Clapton and Sade and all kinds of people were like, we want to be part of this. Queen, Freddie Mercury, David Bowie. All of a sudden, this went from one band in a small pub in London to not just the biggest stadium in London, Wembley Stadium, but it went to a stadium in New York and London, and it was telecast all over the world, and they raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and they saved millions of lives. Not because Bob Geldof went out to save millions of lives, but he said, what can I do? I've got a band. I've got a friend that has a pub. In a similar way, when we talk about working within our sphere of influence, when this congregation decided to give away our collection plate on Sunday mornings, that was just something that we said, let's try this, let's do this, and let's help organizations, education, and the homeless center, and the child abuse center, and all these different places within our community. We said, they need help, and we'll take a collection and give it away every week. Well, the word spread about us doing that. And churches, Unitarian Universalist churches anyway, across the country started to do the same thing. At this point, hundreds of Unitarian Universalist churches across the country give away all or part of their collection plate every Sunday morning. So now we couldn't help homeless people and domestic abuse victims or survivors in different communities in Baltimore and Boston and Knoxville. But by doing what we could do, helping those here, using our resources, all of a sudden, it's spread, and now that idea is helping people all over the country. That's how it works. When we work within our sphere of influence, our influence grows. There's always something that we can do, no matter what it is. So in a week like we've just been through in our country, in a year like we've just been through, in our lives, wherever we are, it's easy to feel powerless. It's easy to feel dispirited and feel like we can't do anything. And the point is, nobody can completely check out. We need each other, and the thing is, none of us are powerless. We just have to remember to work within our own sphere of influence. That's how we can feel in control in an out-of-control world, because we're doing things that we actually can impact. So as we begin this new year of 2021, it's gotten off to quite a start, I want to suggest that you take a moment and maybe draw your own circle of concern and write down, what are all the things that matter to me? Because I know there's a lot, from probably climate change to homelessness. And then right in that smaller circle and write in, what are some things I can do? Things that I can actually do. And then watch as you work within that sphere and put your energy within that sphere instead of just spinning out about all the other things that we can't control. Put that time, put that energy, put that love into those things that you can impact and watch your influence grow. And that's how, in fact, that's the only way that we can really make a difference in the world. And we can see that when people feel out of control, they turn to all kinds of, quite frankly, crazy and dangerous things in order to try to wrestle back some sense of power and agency in the world. Let us be an example of something different. That's how we will overcome the virus. That's how we will get our economy back on track. That's how we will have finally a reckoning with race in this nation that moves us forward into the promise of equality, of which we all care so deeply. This is how we will repair our country. And that, my friends, is what makes America great. Amen. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Clear it. Be